time again for the Insiders with Chuck Chvala and Scott Jensen, sponsored by the Wisconsin Counties Association and the Tommy G. Thompson Center on Public Leadership.
Hi, I'm Scott Jensen, former Assembly Speaker.
And I'm Chuck Chvala, former Senate Majority Leader.
And we're the Insiders. And this week we're talking about the race for the Department of Public Instruction. Usually a pretty sleepy race here in the state of Wisconsin. Not much money gets spent in these things. It's a nonpartisan affair. Well, all that seems to have changed this year. It looks like there might be as much as $10 million spent in the race for the Department of Public Instruction between incumbent Jill Underly and challenger Brittany Kinser. So Chuck, how do you size up this race?
Well, it's going to be tighter than normal, I think, because as Scott knows, as far back as I think both of us could remember, the progressive or the pro-public education candidate has always won this race. And so the teachers and others that are allies of theirs have had success. This year, it is definitely, again, a choice between a big-time supporter of vouchers and a supporter of public education. Given what's happened out there's been such a rush to give huge amounts of money to the voucher programs. And given the recent story that was written by Wisconsin Public Radio about this one entity, the Academy in Milwaukee, that's getting $40 million from the state, not just for the people they have at school there, but for their statewide voucher, virtual learning voucher program, they're making a fortune. You would think with all that money that's been siphoned off of public schools to private schools, you would think, hey, this is going to be a year where it's even going to be more overwhelmingly for the public education support of the current incumbent Jill Underly. And yet there's an undercurrent that, first of all, a lot of money is being spent by the voucher people to take this race down. And secondly, there have been questions raised. The governor, for example, hasn't specifically endorsed Underly, at least that I've seen. And so there are some questions that are coming down about, well, where is this really headed? You also have to recognize that even though 10 million, as Scott points out, is going to be spent on this race, that's a huge amount of money for this race. It's unprecedented to have that much spent, but it's in part, I think, because it's competitive. But you have to understand that this is not the most important race. The most important race is the Supreme Court, and that's going to dominate. And I would say that this race will probably only vary. It just shows how partisan we are now. This is a nonpartisan race. I would expect we're not going to vary by more than a couple percent in terms of the results here. And I would say that Underly will probably run behind Crawford. That would be my guess. So I would say if Crawford only pulls out a 51% win, there's a chance that the superintendent race could go to the voucher or conservative candidate. But I don't think that there's a formula here that you can be as exact as you can be in another partisan race. As you may recall, one of the points that was made about Rebecca Cook running against Van Orden in the congressional seat in the fall is that she ran ahead of both Kamala Harris and Tammy Baldwin. Well, that's really unusual to have that happen in a partisan race. These races aren't partisan, but it shows how partisan we're becoming, that there probably won't be that much difference. So if I had to predict, I would say that I think Jill Underly will win, but I would be even more nervous about this one than I am about the Crawford race, because I do think that she'll probably run a couple percent behind. And if the Crawford race is close, that could be difficult for her.
Well, in this race, as you know, unlike the Supreme Court race, there's an incumbent. And in a race where an incumbent faces a challenger, the race is usually won or lost by what people think about the job of the incumbent, whether the incumbent's done a good job. And that's really the Achilles heel for Underly in this race. She lowered the test scores in Wisconsin. She dropped the standards in the state, standards written by Tony Evers, who then said that was a mistake. She shouldn't have done that. She hid the financial troubles that the Milwaukee Public Schools were in when there was a question on the ballot about whether or not we should give these people who apparently can't manage money more money. That was clearly a cover-up on their part in order to make sure that that referendum passed. There's been, I think, an effort to try, therefore, by the Underly camp and the Democratic Party to redefine Brittany Kinser, lifelong Democrat and public school teacher and public school principal, as the voucher lady. That's just sort of extraordinary. And the reason that it hasn't been working is She is someone with a lifetime of experience teaching or leading as a principal a public school and public schools in this state and in other places. So I don't think that message has quite gotten the attraction that everybody wants. I also think that Kinser got out there earlier. She was up on television for a whole week, I think, before the Underly camp caught up. If I were a voter, I'd watch the ads that you have at the end. I think you see that the Underly camp is spending all of its money attacking Kinser, bad sign for an incumbent, and that the Kinser camp is talking about the issues. Do we want to raise standards or lower them in Wisconsin? Do we want to focus on reading and writing, or do we want to focus on politics in the classroom? What about the problems in the Milwaukee public schools? So I think one candidate's focused on issues, the other one's focusing on personality. That suggests to me that Kinser has an edge in this race. And it's possible that you get a split decision in this race, but when we have that happen in Wisconsin, like we just did in the presidential race, where we voted for Trump and for Baldwin for the United States Senate, two people kind of at opposite ends of the scale. It's usually the result of who voted in each of those races. And it's possible, like it was possible in the presidential race, that there's some people who don't vote in the Supreme Court race and skip down to other things on the ballot, like a local mayor's race or this race for Department of Public Instruction. We saw that last fall, and it's possible again here in the spring. So again, I'm predicting really close races for both of the statewide races. I think Kinser has the edge on this one.
Well, two things. First of all, Kinser does not hold a license to either be a public school teacher in Wisconsin, nor is to be an administrator in the state of Wisconsin.
She does now.
In a public school.
And she did before.
And by the way, that brings me to my second point that Scott's bringing up. You notice how strongly and vehemently Scott is in favor of Kinser? He's the Republican. I'm the Democrat. I'm telling you that she's for vouchers. Scott is trying to tell you that she's for public education. I can tell you that all the people in public education that I'm aware of, and by the way, my parents were both teachers. I know lots of them. They're all supporting Underly. Frankly, some of them actually voted for another candidate who supported public education in the primary, Jeff Wright, but he did not make it. They are supportive of public education, and they are supporting Jill Underly. Everyone I know who's in the public education field is supporting Jill Underly. The voucher people are supporting Kinser. So it is public education versus vouchers. There's no mixing this up. This is a partisan election, just like the other ones are. It's not, there will not be a D or an R behind their name, but you may as well put a PE, public education, behind the Jill Underly's name, and VE, voucher education, behind Kinser, and that's what this is about. And if they're able to confuse people in a $10 million race, they may be able to do so. And sure, I mean, with the governor not endorsing her, that's not a help for Jill Underly, definitely. But I do think at the end of the day, it's about public education versus vouchers. And I think people are at a point here now, seeing the voucher money, draining the money from their schools, and them having to go out and vote for referendum. I do think we're at a point where Jill Underly will still pull it off, because people are thinking public education needs to be supported.
This is an example of how the Democratic leadership in the state is out of touch, even with some Democrats and with many voters. The polling's consistently shown that people want to support a wide variety of options. More money for the public schools. They support charter schools. They support Wisconsin's voucher program. It's 35 years old. The program in the most recent poll by Marquette showed that a majority of the voters of the state support it. It's shown that again and again, and the Democrats keep running against it, and it has not worked for you well at the legislative level, and I don't think it's going to work well for you here in this one. But we'll leave that up to the voters.
As soon as the public figures out that those voucher school dollars take from the public school and drive up their property taxes, this is going to end. It's not going to happen in this election, but let's see what happens next fall. Not this next fall, but the fall of 96 or of 26. I think you're going to see a very dramatic change. I think that you're going to see public people running for governor based on this issue, and running for other statewide offices and other regional offices with senators and representatives. I think you're going to see a very big change, because what's going on now, a $40 million voucher school in Milwaukee that takes money from rural schools. I can't wait to see the ads that are going to be put on across Wisconsin related to that issue. But we shall see. And this spring election, maybe it's a harbinger of things to come.
In the wake of COVID, parents are looking for more options, not less. The polling is extraordinarily on the side of more options, not less. But we'll see.
Unless it takes their tax dollars. We'll see you next time.
You've been listening to The Insiders with Chuck Chvala and Scott Jensen, sponsored by the Wisconsin Counties Association and the Tommy G. Thompson Center on Public Leadership.